Hey, Quinn, you have a very young team for the most part, likely to improve over the next few years. When you see the Warriors, are there things in the organization on the team you feel you can emulate, or are they just too singular in a way to see that?
It's hard for me to comment on that on a more general sense, organizationally and things like that, because I just don't have, what I see is what I see, and the respect I have for Steve and what the culture that they've created. You can't. They demonstrate it in everything that they do, and when a team kind of lives who they are, that's a unique group. And frankly, when it's more than just the talent that they have as a group, it's that they all believe in each other, and they're willing to sacrifice for one another. And that's, I think for any coach, any organization, any group of players, that's the part that you'd want to emulate as much as anything. It's just the unselfishness that group plays with, and the care that they have for one another on the court. They've got each other's backs. I feel like we've got that with our team, but it's something that you have to develop. So that's what I see when you play them. That's the kind of the thin red line that runs through the game.
You waited to take Rudy and Gordon out late, obviously, to get them their applause. Can you kind of explain your thinking there, and did you get the send-off, I guess, that you were hoping for them?
It wasn't necessarily kind of my hope of a send-off, I guess. Aaron, I think it was more, the game at that point was, for better, for worse, over, with the exception of the time running out. It wasn't a situation where we were going to be able to catch up. And at that point, you're thinking of everything from injury to whatever, and I did want them to have an opportunity with those two guys. They were out there, and other guys had come in and out, and I think what those two guys have done this year is really significant. And to the extent that that's recognizable and was recognized tonight, I'm happy about that. So there wasn't, it wasn't a grandstanding or anything like that. The game dictated it, for one. And yeah, I thought it was appropriate in that moment.
Coach, you mentioned the adversity that your team has gone through all year long. What are some of the biggest points of growth that you think they accomplished through that? And did any of those surprise you, even with how well you knew this group?
I'm gonna respond first by saying I need a night to digest. But you basically asked the question the way I would probably answer it. So it has been that. There has been a tremendous, adversity, and his opportunity if handled the right way, and I think that's been a mantra. And if that's the case, if the whole idea is to keep growing and stay committed, and our guys have done that, and that's something we want to carry through.
You opened by saying you were really happy and everything. Do you feel like you got everything you can out of this team this year?
I think that we got a lot out of one another, and that our players got everything. They got everything out of me, and we tried to get it out of them, and that was kind of the, when you go through a struggle in some ways like that, you just appreciate the minor victories and the larger ones that accumulate along the way. And I think, without being too melodramatic, this to me is a unique season, and it's a unique group. I've been a part of teams that have won more, I've been a part of teams that have won less, but I've never had a group that's had a season like this.
Jody Guinness, Deseret News. I couldn't let the opportunity go by this wayside without asking you to evaluate Dante Exum's performance tonight.
Well, I mean, I think I've been consistent the whole year as far as not wanting to single Dante out, and that not because there's any undue pressure on one player, but that's not who we are. We're about the team, and what Dante's shown in the last half of the season, or especially recently, is his ability to play within the team and help the team. And anytime you're on the floor, if you make your team better, you're doing a good job.
I guess in terms of guys stepping up and just how it's been all year, is that how you feel Dante and Shelvin were tonight a little bit in absence of George? Just same old deal?
Yeah, a little bit same old deal. You know, we're reaching a point where I'm waxing poetic about our season. I'd rather not go there. We lost tonight. Those guys did a good job. I've said kind of my piece about a lot of that, and I need to take a deep breath and think more about it. But I was really, anytime players have the individual and personal challenges of playing, not playing, being injured, you know, coming back, it's always gratifying as a coach when you see those guys raise their level. And that's what you saw Dante do tonight. That's what you saw Shelvin do. That's what you've seen Howell do. Those three guys at given points in time have all been starters and have all been fourth point guards. That's unusual. So to be able to ride that roller coaster is something I think you have to respect them as men.
Coach, could you talk about Gordon's performance in the playoffs and the way he's led your team, what he's meant to your team, his leadership?
He's been terrific, and he has led our team. Even the game that he had food poisoning and couldn't play, in a way, he actually led our team because of the fact that he got out there and, you know, almost passed out and did pass out, you know, in the back and then had to go home. And that's been who he's been. He's been, you know, since last summer, we've talked about it. You know, you saw the fruits of his labors with an all-star game. I think you saw, you know, the same thing with the playoffs. He's just invested. And anytime you invest like that, you know, usually it may not pay dividends immediately, but it does over time. And I think in Gordon's case, it's a little bit of both. This past summer for him was unique, but as long as I've been here, which isn't a long time, but it's a little longer now, you know, he's been that guy. And we just do our best to try to, you know, put him in positions where he can excel. And, you know, his character is shown, his competitiveness. And we don't ask Gordon to be the most vocal guy. You know, people need to be who they are. But there's a leadership component that he's demonstrated throughout these playoffs. And he's not a point guard, so you don't see him with the ball calling plays. He's maybe not as emotionally charged as Rudy all the time, but it's burning inside him. There's a fire in there, and that's what I saw in the playoffs. He raised his level at the most important, most competitive time.
As this Warriors team kind of moves forward and other teams are trying
I couldn't hear you.
As this Warriors team moves forward and other teams are kind of trying to take them down, would you have any suggestions or do they have any like soft spots, or is it just kind of a freight train right now?
You know, if I had answers, we wouldn't have. You know, every team, you know, a lot of it's just how are you playing? They're playing very well right now. They're a very good team. I've kind of said everything. I don't know how I can expand on what I said before about what I perceive to be their strengths. Every team that plays them will be, you know, whether they play San Antonio or Houston next, those are two different teams. So it's always from a kind of a strategic standpoint, it's hard for me to dive in on that. I know some of the things that we felt were important, but you know that those were things that we tried to execute.
Coach, although the ending is disappointing, but just still achieved the goal, 50 win and get into second round.
Yeah.
So how do you evaluate Jazz performance this season? And for Jazz, what would you like them to improve next season?
Okay. We've really tried to stay away from very specific goals in terms of wins and advance. And had we lost Game 7 to the Clippers, I don't know that I'd feel that much different. I'm glad we didn't. I think that gave us an opportunity that was good for us. Had we won 49 games, I don't know if I'd feel that much different. Those are benchmarks, and they're great, and you can feel pride in them. But the thing that I feel about our group is there's been an arc to this season, and I think from where we started, we're further along than when we began. And you know, as far as going forward, I just would like to continue that process, frankly.
Thanks, Coach.
Okay.